Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. I'm going to get back to my bread and butter with this video, talking about another old band from the 60s and 70s that I love, CLARK-HUTCHINSON. They're not on a lot of people's radar, and I have to admit, I'd never really heard of them back when I was a teenager and even into my 20s. You didn't really hear about import albums that much. You had to go to specialty stores, and a lot of things like CLARK-HUTCHINSON just weren't there. But one day I was pouring through the used racks at Cellophane Square here in Seattle, and I came across CLARK-HUTCHINSON's Retribution album, and I knew I was in for the goods. I just looked at the cover and saw these four wasted Neanderthals. It's just a classic cover. They just look like the kind of band that I love, and I knew they were going to play some pretty damaged shit. And like I say, I'd never even heard them before. And I got it home and put it on, and I was floored. It's just beautiful, crazed, damaged rock with incredible singing, astonishing guitar playing, and great rhythm section. Just everything I love about old rock bands really delivered the goods. But anyway, in this day and age, of course, we can get all that information, and I got to backtrack and get their other records. But I'm going to go into their history a little bit first. And so we have Clark and Hutchinson kind of first met in a band called San Gopal Dream. And before that, Mitch Hutchinson had also played in a band called the Sounds of Fred that had 3 singles, and I haven't checked those out yet, but I'll look for them. But then he was in a band called Sam Gopal Dream, and they did pretty well. The band was Pete Sears on keyboards, Mick Hutchinson on guitar, Sam Gopal, and then Andy Clark. And he didn't record anything with them because he left the band and Lemmy took over. And so there's a Sam Gopal record that has Lemmy on it, and so that's how Sam Gopal's known now. I would have loved to have heard him with Mick Hutchinson in the group. But then by 1968, Andy Clark and Mick Hutchinson were in a group called Vamp, and it included Viv Prince on drums from the Pretty Things, and they released 145 on Atlantic called Floatin'. And in my research, I heard there's another version of that that's even crazier. Maybe it'll come out someday, but I'll put the link to the Vamp single below along with everything else. Really cool, great stuff for 1968. It's got that 68 sound, but it's a little forward thinking. It's pretty good hard rock moving in that direction. And then by 1969 they recorded a blues album, but it didn't get released until 20 or 30 years later. Recorded in 1969, the CLARK-HUTCHINSON Blues Band, and it's excellent. That whole era is filled with great blues bands like the Groundhogs, for example, and I think this compares fairly well to that. And then the early Savoy Brown Blues Band and all those blues bands, and they've got that sound. And Andy Clark's great on vocals, and Mick Hutchinson's playing great blues. He was a great guitar player right off the bat, clearly. And I'm really amazed that that record didn't get released. It seems like any number of UK labels would have been interested in the CLARK-HUTCHINSON Blues Band. And I love Andy Clark's vocals and Mick Hutchinson's guitar sound, so the blues record really has a special place for me, because after having heard the CLARK-HUTCHINSON Band, hearing them in that embryonic stage is really wonderful. And so after that, they came out with an album in 1969, A equals MH squared. It was recorded in 2 12-hour sessions, and it's just the two of them, and it's great. It's instrumental, and Mick Hutchinson plays some great Indian style ragas, I guess you call them, on guitar, and plays them pretty loudly. And there's just a lot of great instrumental work on it. It kind of runs the gamut, mostly improvised, it sounds like, and just the two of them. And since Andy Clark is a multi-instrumentalist, there's a lot of different colors, and textures to the record. But remarkable that their first album got put out, considering how improvised how strange even for those times, and they're not like a full-fledged rock band, so kind of remarkable that it got put out, and even more remarkable is that it got put out in the U.S. And I'm nearly 70 years old, and I've only seen one or two copies of the U.S. version of it in my life. But kind of surprising to find out that it did come out in the U.S. and that they thought there was a market for it here in the U.S. The more remarkable, considering how strange it is that I never ran across it in the used bins in all those years. But then we get to 1970 and the Retribution album. Holy mackerel! I already talked to you about that. The band looks pretty much as damaged as they come on the cover. Kind of made me think of the Pink Fairies or something. And I guess there's a lot of drugs in the band, which kind of makes sense. I mean, the big classic track off of Retribution, Free to Be Stoned, of course, is a classic now with just stunning, beautiful 70s hard rock guitar work by Mick Hutchinson and a pounding rhythm section. So by the time they put out Retribution, they became a quartet, and they added Stephen Amazing on bass and Del Coverley on drums, and they're both excellent. And the whole album is great. Just so many great tunes, and it's just a consummate early 70s damaged British hard rock album. I would put it up against anybody, and I definitely put it in my collection with some of my favorite damaged hard rock of that era. Andy Clark's vocals are just one of a kind, and Mick Hutchinson is just a superb guitar player, and that album really exemplifies it. And then in 1971, oh no, by the way, apparently they recorded Retribution live in just a few hours, and when I first found that out, I had to go back and listen to the record and realize that they had just done that straight and live. And it sounds that way. There's a lot of ways the arrangements are done that the only way they could have done it and pulled it off is to do it live. And then in 1971, they released their final album, Gestalt. And it's really wonderful, too. It's a little more sparse. And Andy Clark's vocals are a little more scattered through the record, and there's some more wonderful instrumental work and a little more somber tone. But I'm not sure they could follow up Retribution and do a full rock record that way. But Gestalt is wonderful. Once again, Mick Hutchinson's wonderful guitar work, and Andy Clark's wonderful vocals, and the whole band just sounds great, but it's a little sad and a little resigned. It kind of feels like they knew they were heading towards the end, and that's kind of a sad thing. But what an output between the Vamp single and then the blues record and then the three Clark-Hutchinson band albums. It's quite a catalog to have, and a very unique band. And once again, maybe not for everybody. The eclecticism is one thing, and then the complete over-the-top delivery and Retribution might not be for everybody. If you're into that kind of 70s guitar band sound, and particularly if you like, Groundhogs or Pink Fairies or Hawkwind or anything like that, it's nothing like them, but definitely kind of fits into that zone, and I love that zone, so it really works for me. Andy Clark ended up playing in Bebop Deluxe of all things, and in fact, and Steve Amazing and Andy Clark both end up in a interesting instrumental band called Up, and their big claim to fame is Jeff Beck really got into them, and there's some video of him playing with them, and there's a couple records. I think there's more than one Up album, but interesting directions for those to go in. And then Mick Hutchinson did a lot of production work with a lot of major artists, as it turns out, and a staggering list. I don't even want to tell you because I don't want to color your opinion of the Clark-Hutchinson band. But in 1988, Mick Hutchinson came out with a record, Mick Hutchinson, The Magic Dragon, and he's still a stunning guitar player and great work, and still is posting material out there. He's got some great stuff on his Facebook page and posted on YouTube, him doing all kinds of guitar extrapolations and obviously having a good time with it. I've actually been in contact with him. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and we've messaged a little bit. I ended up turning up a couple of BBC shows and forwarded them to him. He was really excited about the first one because a lot of people were kind of trying to discuss what Clark Hutchinson sounded like live, and now we have this BBC material, and I'll post those below as well. And so we get a pretty good picture of Clark Hutchinson, although I'm sure, according to the interviews, which I'll also post below, it'd be hard to encompass all the crazy shit that happened with the band Clark Hutchinson, and unfortunately we don't have a bunch of live material. That would be great. I would definitely love to hear live material from around the time they did Retribution. That would be totally insane. But what a great band. What a one-of-a-kind band. They really slipped under the radar for many years, but it's good to see people discovering them now. And now they're legendary. Who doesn't want to be legendary? I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.